Salamat pagi from Yogyakarta.
Today we're going to show you one of the most beautiful Hindu temples in the most populous Islamic country in the world.
And it's right here, just half an hour outside of Yogyakarta city in central Java.
Let's get started.
Thank you. Hello guys, welcome to a brand new vlog. And what you see here, this is one of the largest and most beautiful Hindu temples in Islamic Indonesia. So Shishira and I are here today at the Prambanan temple. The Prambanan temple is actually a very interesting temple because it's not a temple for one god, it's a temple for three gods. In Hinduism, it's called as the Trimurti or the Hindu Trinity. So this Trinity represents Shiva, which is in this really big temple. Shishira, you want to run to the corner for scale? So as you can see, Shishira is really small and you can see how big this temple really is. And then you have the Brahma temple behind me here, which is a little smaller. This one was about 45 meters tall. This one's about 33. And on the other side, you have the Vishnu temple there. So a majority of the people here in Indonesia who were Hindus practiced Shaivism, and that is why you see a bigger form of temple for Shiva and then smaller temples for the other gods. But what is even more interesting is in front of each of these big temples. So you have, this is the Brahma temple, right? So in front of the Brahma temple, you have another smaller temple right here. This one is the temple for the Vahana or the vehicle of Brahma. So that's Hamsa. Hamsa is the swan. Similarly, so kids are very excited.
Bye.
So a lot of school kids here today, and they always like to meet with foreigners to say hello because they're so curious. Gives us a chance to interact with locals too, so it's always fun. And as I was saying, so in front of the Shiva temple, you will find that one, and that is the temple of Nandi. Nandi is the bull who is the vehicle of Shiva, and similarly there you will find the temple for Garuda. Garuda is the Vahana of Vishnu, which is right there in front. And for almost 100 years, this was the main seat of power. So the temples are very important. It was built by the Sanjaya dynasty, which was merging into the Shailendra dynasty, which ruled all of Java at that time. But very soon, the new dynasty, which took control of this place called the Matram dynasty, moved the capital from Yogyakarta to another part of Java, because of which this temple lost its importance. So the temple mostly stayed abandoned until the 1500s or 1600s when a major earthquake destroyed all of this. Once that happened, it lay in ruins until probably well into the 1800s when the British came here. They were ruling Yogyakarta and they were led to this place by the locals, and the locals basically showed them a pile of ruins. The British realized the importance because at the same time they were ruling India and they learned so much about Hindu culture. They decided to work towards the restoration of this temple. Over the next couple of centuries, and even as recently as 1960s when the Indonesian government was in fresh power, they helped restore a significant portion of this, and today this is the temple you see. Now it's not perfect, but there are a lot of interesting and intricate details that we can show you, like this one. So here's a very good example of what you can see. So you can see here, this is a lion statue, a Singa. So the temple itself, as you can see, has massive granite stone walls, and this one is a Simha with an arch all around it. As you can see, this is a typical Hindu temple style where there is a lion which represents power, and then you have this arch, and then you have these two motifs on either side. And this is interesting because the tree that is growing here, this is actually the Kalpa Vriksha or the Kalpataru, a wish fulfilling tree in Hindu mythology. And these two here are two small animals. Here, I think they are supposed to represent like a peacock, and then you have two actual birds there. Now, archaeologists said that this is not the only formation they have found. I couldn't spot different kinds, but I can spot variations in the design. Like these two look slightly different from these two, and they could be peacocks, they could be monkeys, they could be a bunch of different animals, but these two were this example. And then at the door you have this other arch with the guardian god Dwarapalakas, and then you have the stairway. The stairway itself is so beautifully made. Even today these intricate designs have remained, and it's really incredible. Just look at how massive that is. And all along you can see different Hindu stories. I could say these are all different scenes from different mythological stories. But what we did learn is that on the inside of this wall, along the same direction, there is the entire story of Ramayana that's described. So we are now walking from the first temple, Prambanan temple, to the other temples. So there are 3 more temples. They're all much smaller, but then you can either walk or take a buggy like this. We have chosen to walk because the buggy is a paid service, and we just saw the first small temple there. It's very nice. Those are also Perava temples, small ones. So 3 of them were fully restored, and the others were, it seems like they're still working on it.
Oh, it's so sunny.
Right next to the Perava temple, there's also a rehabilitation center. I think that's where they are working on restoring all of these monuments to their old selves. And now we see a second temple here. It looks like it's a very big complex because once you get in, Prambanan is just like the first 1/4 of the entire place. It looks like you can keep walking for about 2 kilometers inside, and there's so many temples. Like right now we are at Candi Prambanan, which is this one. Shish says it reminds her of another temple.
Patadkal temple in Karnataka. It looks very similar to that.
Yeah. And with this, we still have one more, which is called Candi Sewu, which is like the biggest one.
And the farthest one.
Yeah. And after that, we're probably going to walk back to the main temple because we didn't really experience the place.
It was so crowded that time. There were so many children there. We couldn't take any pictures of us.
So now,
I'm thinking we'll go back there by sunset time.
the best way to do this though is to come here at like 7 a.m. in the morning. That way you can spend an entire day. Because if you come here like anytime during the day, at least you will need about 3 to 4 hours to explore the place to, basically do justice for how much money you end up paying. So best to come here in the, either in the morning half, starting at 7, or before 8 you get here. And then the second half of the day is the second option. Like if you're visiting Borobudur in the morning, you can come here in the second half of the day, probably around lunchtime, and stay until sunset. So although we didn't go to Borobudur ourselves, we're trying to do the second half because we want to see this place at sunset. Okay, Candi Prambanan temple is actually one of the few Buddhist temples here inside the Hindu temple complex. And what makes this interesting is the design of the temple. The temple itself was actually built in the shape of Mount Meru because the king who built this had recently converted into Buddhism from Hinduism. He used to be a follower of Shiva. That is why an essence of Shaivism is also incorporated in this design of Mount Meru. So while Mount Meru represents the 7 levels of humanity from the netherworld to heaven, this temple is still shaped like that, but also has the shape of a linga and a yoni, which represents masculinity and femininity in Hinduism, or in the simplest words, the figure of Lord Shiva as a linga. So that's what this temple is. And it's so interesting that even today you like all of this is preserved, right? So you get to experience this culture firsthand. So now we are at the second largest temple in central Java called Candi Sewu. This one apparently has 249 temples right there. So cool. This is inside the sanctum. Looks like someone's doing some worship there. All stupa shaped designs everywhere.
We just picked up a souvenir. It's a little stupa and it has a Buddha inside.
You're getting kicked out. That means you've successfully used the ticket to its maximum value.
We still have one more photo to shoot. That panoramic viewpoint.
Paranomic?
Yes.
The paranomic?
You can see all the temples from one place.
So apparently a 2006 earthquake knocked off the tip of the monument here from the temple, and then it fell off over there. And even today, as a witness to that, the fallen piece remains as it is. If you've made it this far into the video, maybe here's another interesting story. There's a legend that is going around here in Yogyakarta about how this temple really came to be. So they say there's this woman called Roro Jonggrang who was here. She was very beautiful, and this man who really liked her apparently asked her to marry him. But she did not want to because the same man had murdered her father. And it is said that she was one of those who was very, very loved by the entire village of this place. And then she convinced everybody that if this man could build 1,000 temples overnight before the break of dawn, she would marry him. The man took it up as a challenge. So he had a lot of spirit powers which he used to summon spirits to build the temple. And all of these temples are built. There was only one more temple left which was being built when this woman, who was already afraid of what was happening, she went ahead and called the villagers along and said, light some rice on fire. So they rubbed rice, set it on fire, and with the fumes that came up, it appeared like daybreak. So the man lost his bet of building 1,000 temples, but in fact, it was not really done, so he got cheated out. And because of that anger that he had, he told her that he would not only desert her and not marry her, but at the same time, he turned her into stone. And she remained as one of the temples here. And that's how 1,000 temples were built here in Yogyakarta.
Hope you guys enjoyed our video today. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one. Bye! Don't forget to subscribe.
3, 2, 1.
Hi guys.
No, Salamat Pagi. 3, 2, 1.
I'll start again. Wait. 1, 2, 3, start. 2, 3.
Shishira is sitting right there because it's very hot and sunny. Maybe a few facts that I've just learned. For Shiva, it is... Wait. Smaller temples seem to be about What, 20? Not 20. Yeah. So the smaller temples seem like they're at least about 40-50 feet tall. And then these big ones, including this one behind me, the Shiva temple, this is definitely really big. This is at least 200? No, this is at least 150 feet tall. So it's pretty big. So we are now walking. My hair looks weird. Here's a very good example of what you can see. Actually,